Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us pray. Gracious Father, we are very thankful to you for the privilege we have to have been called to serve in this country. We assemble in this place of decision-making, policy-making, and law-making. We ask for your divine presence to be with us today. We pray that you will guide in all of our deliberations, and may everything that we do redound to the benefit of the people whom we serve. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for keeping us safe. And we ask that you will be with us throughout today. This we ask in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. And as our Father has taught us, so we pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Monday, February 20th, 2023 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the minutes of the meeting held on February 20th be deferred.
Right, second.
The questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honor, the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I am commanded to lay the annual reports and financial statements of the Barbados Deposit Insurance Corporation for the years 2019 to 2021.
Government notices.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, the vesting in the Home Ownership Providing Energy Inc., HOPE Inc., of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situated at Hanson Plantation, in the parishes of St. George, St. Michael, and Christchurch in this island for housing development. I also beg to give notice of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, the vesting in the National Housing Corporation of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situated at Hanson Plantation in the parishes of St. George and Christchurch in this island for residential and commercial purposes.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports on select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Transport Authority Amendment Bill 2023.
The questions that the aforementioned bill be read here first time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I also beg to move the first reading of the Public Procurement Amendment Bill 2023.
The questions that the aforementioned bill be also read the first time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Beg to second.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those other members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 11, in the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Chapter 225, the vesting in the home ownership, Providing Energy, Inc., Hope, Incorporated, of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situate at Handsome Plantation in the parishes of St. George, St. Michael, and Christchurch in this island for housing development.
Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to introduce this resolution. But Mr. Speaker, the resolution to vest is 20.53 acres of land in Port Inc. This resolution links with a second resolution to vest another 20 acres of land in the National Housing Corporation. And I beg, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence to have these two resolutions done in a cognate debate.
The question is that Order 11 and 12 be debated as a cognate debate, given the fact that they're inextricably linked. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. Orders 11 and 12 will be debated as a cognate debate.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I get into the resolution, I crave your indulgence and the indulgence of this Lord Chamber to recognize the passing of a stalwart from my community and known to most members in this chamber, a lady by the name of Miss Yuka Leacock, who passed away this morning, gone to the great beyond, and who was indeed a stalwart of this great party that I represent. And the reason why I asked you to give me a few seconds or minutes to recognize her, because very often we come to public life, and I don't think I can say this for members in this chamber. Some persons before, and I'm hoping the rest who come after us, after we've gone, don't adopt the attitude of thinking they have arrived and they have done it themselves. And when you meet persons from humble origins, working class origin, who tutored you as young men and women in all aspects of politics, having not gone to any university to be taught political science, but who understood the art of political science and the strategy of political science to allow people like myself to enter these chambers and to indeed reach to the level that you can represent your country and become a minister of government. And that's why I'm taking the time to recognize the contribution that Mrs. Yuka Leacock has paid to this great institution and to Barbados. Saluital, I spoke to him this morning, and it was a shocker to him. And indeed, Saluital mentioned to me this morning, and I know we shouldn't call names in this chamber, but nonetheless, bear with me. He said to me, young Sutherland, I became a pretty good politician. He's a very modest man. He said, a pretty good politician. And I corrected him and I said, an excellent politician. He said, because of the likes of Miss Yukalika and my dad, Luther Sutherland, who, he said, propped up the constituency branch when he was away doing duties on behalf of this country. There were his eyes and ears in St. George South. And I conclude by saying to you, Yukalika made me who I am today, a good parliamentary representative. And I want to offer my deepest condolences on behalf of this great institution, the Barbados Labour Party, and closer to home, the branch, the executive and members of the St. George South branch, and even closer to home, she walked the length and breadth of Dash Valley with me. And now I have family in Dash Valley as a result of Yukalika and the work she has done. So to her husband, Robert, and her son, Jamal, her nieces, nephews, and the entire Leacock and associated families, I offer my sincere condolences on behalf of the Barbados Labour Party and the St. George South Executive Branch, and indeed my family, to whom she was very close. May she rest in peace and rise in glory. Mr. Speaker, while it is a sad morning, and I'm dressed appropriately as a result, in recognition of her contribution to this earth, I'm here to do justice to the housing stock of this country. And I start there because Barbadians, local and afar, abroad in the diaspora, some have reached out to me with respect to the mandate that has been given to build 10,000 houses. And there are a number of persons who are expressing a keen interest in partnering with the government to ensure that this dream of building these houses become a reality. And I start there because we have articulated, both in the throne speech and also in several different debates, our quest and our need to provide housing solutions for Barbadians. And I spoke Sunday in a lovely place at a lovely gathering with the member for St. Michael's Southeast. Actually, it was a very refreshing afternoon spent with persons of humble origins asking relevant questions. And all they're asking is, when are we going to get some housing? When are we going to get the necessary assistance? When will the government relieve some of the stressors and stressors in the pine, in the various housing developments, the three estates? And I start there because this resolution, though it is vesting of lands in Hope and in National Housing Corporation, 19.9 acres of the land situated at Lower Burnie in St. George, St. Michael, and Christchurch will be vested in Hope Inc. And another 20.6 acres of this land will be vested in National Housing Corporation, and that's why they are both resolutions 11 and 12. It's one area, but we are vesting half, a 50-50 split, 19.9 acres and another 20.6 acres in Hope Inc. and also in National Housing Corporation. And this land basically was owned by Handsome Plantation owned by Kingsland Estate. It's a Handsome Plantation, but it was owned by Kingsland Estates Limited. And it was acquired by the land, by the state in the form of a planning gain. And it's actually 16.4 hectares of land, which if you talk in acres, that's 40.53 acres of land. and it was acquired for both residential and commercial purposes. The development on this land will be targeted to a large extent at providing affordable low-income housing with an estimated 300 housing units to be built across the 40-acre parcel. And why the split? Persons are probably asking why the split, why we're investing half in Hope Inc. and half in National Housing Corporation. And I will begin with Hope Inc. Hope Inc. was formed by this government as a private entity, public-private entity, to build the majority of houses and to take it off this government's balance sheet, basically. We came to Parliament with the budget debate, and one of the provisions in the budget debate for housing was the establishment of a blue-green bank. And what this aimed to do is to create the necessary financing off balance sheet of government, so that with this initiative, government would be a shareholder of the Blue-Green Bank. When we speak of climate change, this is how we are seeking to raise funding to address some of our challenges. And we estimated, and I think the Prime Minister during the budget debate, during our budgetary proposals for this country 2 weeks ago, estimated that this Blue-Green Bank initiative would create some $500 million in financing, off-the-book financing, to allow us to build houses in this country and to allow that dream of building 10,000 houses to be realized. And I started there because you can't build houses without money. You have to have financing to get these houses built. And sitting down, and some persons would always say we do things on the back of a cigarette pack. I had a boss who worked out finances at the back of a cigarette pack, and I have a good senior minister who works out financing in his head and on his phone. So we sat and we looked to see what's the cost of infrastructure to build these 300 houses at Lower Burney in the parishes of Christchurch, St. George, and St. Michael. And we estimated some $6 million in infrastructure costs to build these 300 houses. You can't build houses without engaging in infrastructure. Putting in the roads, putting in the services, water, putting in electricity. We estimate that approximately $6 million off the cigarette pack, the back of a cigarette pack. We don't smoke, but we work with things at the back of a cigarette pack. On a piece of paper then. That's the term for it in the industry, the engineering industry. And $6 million is by no means $6. Presently, we have started some infrastructural work at Concordia Gardens in Dodge, St. Philip. And the cost of the infrastructural work to be able to build 150 houses, that's averaging $3.4 million up there. And thus far, we have spent just over $1.2 million. And we're at a stage of probably paving the roads now, putting down the actual asphalt to have these roads in a state that we can begin to, build these houses this year. And persons may ask when this project will start. These houses at Lower Burney will start. And I allow you to know that infrastructural works on a 40-acre plot of land will take you 4 to 6 months. So while we expect to begin the construction this year, we are hoping that by the end of the financial year, we should have some houses erected and persons ready to move into Lower Burney. We can't achieve all 300 by the end of this financial year for sure. But by the end of this financial year, by March 2024, certainly houses will be erected at Lower Burney. Now, it is also anticipated that these houses and the lands acquired will enhance the settlement in the area. Basically, it is an estate, Kingston Estate. It is land, they're really occupied by bush. And we have some challenges within the Pineland Estates, the 3 Pineland Estates, as it relates to the housing stock. And I spoke on Sunday at Wilkie Commonwealth School it is. And I must say, Barbadians are indeed in tune with what this government is doing, the good work this government is doing. And I must say that the St. Michael Southeast is in good hands based on the show of persons who came out on Sunday to engage with me and to engage with their parliamentary representative. And they were all from that area. And I would say the questions and the comments were encouraging. Some I wrote down, not on the back of a cigarette pack, but I wrote them in my book, because some of the questions from ordinary Barbadians who didn't go to university, and some of the comments tells me that Barbados is in good hands. And we as ministers, we have to listen. And we as ministers, when we are given good comments, we should say to people, thank you. And you know, we are often criticized, and of course we take criticism. People say we can't take criticism, but if there's one thing that I know every single member here does, is to accept criticism. Backs are broad. We use that term not to say that we are big and strong, but we take criticism and we embrace it. And we go back either to our ministries or we go home and we indeed engage those comments with a view to improve whatever we are doing. And I was pleased on Sunday that it made my job so easy to come here this morning and stand despite being saddened by the death of a comrade. I am confident that I can speak without fear and with the fact that we have the support of the ordinary Barbadians with respect to these projects that we are executing. Soon to be will be 20 units at Arlene's Court. And I often say to the member for the city that if he remains in active politics for 30 years, the work that he will see executed by this government on his behalf would indeed keep him as the parliamentary representative, not only in politics, but as the parliamentary representative for 30 years. You have youth on your side. And that member and I, we have journeyed in the city. I spoke in the budget, in the second reading speech, when I spoke about greenfield rehabilitation, where we are looking to indeed improve the environs of the city as it relates to the housing stock. And we can say, you know, if there's one parish in this country, I mean, we have challenges across the country with respect to housing, because I cannot stand here and say to the people of this country that the last administration did justice to the housing stock of this country. They would have done some high-rise buildings at very high cost. But when we look at across the landscape of this country, we are short on housing. Hence, that is why we have engaged in this revolution, this 10,000 housing silent revolution to build these houses. And once the financing is in place, we will certainly execute this project. We have to get the financing in place, and that is being worked on. But I go back to the city, where Arlene's Court will be finished shortly, 20 units. And I go back to the city, where we are looking to rehabilitate and make right Greenfield, which is next to the Ministry of Housing. And it would be remiss of me to sit in the Ministry of Housing every day and the window that I look through looks directly onto Greenfield. And it pains me to know, and I keep saying it, I'm not a stock record, but I have to say The IDB provided some 30 million US dollars to make right the housing issues in some urban settlements in this country. Greenfield was one, Catskill was one. St. Thomas, what's the name of St. Thomas? Allen View was one. And I know we are going to St. Thomas later, and I expect many questions and comments coming from the people of St. Thomas with respect to housing and probably roads too. So we are here to make right some of these issues that were supposedly being taken care of under the last administration. But when you can get 30 million in funding by the IDB to address some urban settlement, and indeed, you know, these settlements were critical to improving the landscape and the development within the urban corridor. $30 million, and over 20 million went back to IDB without any work being done in these areas. And here we are. I think the Prime Minister used the word cleanup, that we're the cleanup team. But we have to do it on behalf of the people of this country. Because if we don't do it, I'm not certain it will be done. And now is the time to do it. And hence, this Lower Burney, 40.53 acres, will address some of the issues in the 3 Pineland estates. And let me go there. I don't plan to speak for the whole morning. But the oldest housing estate in this country is in the Pinelands estate. Was built in 1949. And when we did our checks, assessments, technical and engineering assessments, these houses were built, senior minister, member for Christchurch West, member for St. Michael Southeast, without ring beams. Without ring beams. You know? And we are about to transfer under the 20-year program some 3,000 of these units for home ownership to persons. And we will do it by an act of parliament. That's the best way to do it. Transferred by the state through an act of parliament. It's the best way to do it. And why are we doing this? Because of the need to give the ordinary man and ordinary woman a piece, not only a piece of this rock, but allow them to own their homes. So under that 20-year terse unit program, transfer of terse units, 20-year program, 3,072 units will be transferred this financial year or the coming financial year, which begins in the 1st of April. But how can we transfer units in this state? We are responsible for the infrastructure. We built them. So we want to make right the structural integrity of these units, either the sewerage and electrical. I will speak to that shortly. We have to make right these units before we transfer them. And Mr. Speaker, members of this chamber, the assessment has started, and we're seeing a lot of dilapidation, poor structures, no ring beams. There are some that we can't even do the electrical upgrade work to. Some we have to, in order to transfer them, we need to finish the electrical upgrade and to address some of the sewage issues. And when we have done that, persons will own their units. And it was someone from the Pine, and I mentioned this on Sunday, person who went to that great institution in St. John, member for the city, is smiling. He's smiling, you know, you can see the teeth. That great institution in St. John. And this lady who went to school with me, she said, Dwight Sutherland, she don't call me the minister. I can't give you the large name in here, that's not right. And she said, all I need is my papers from National Housing. I have 3 children, so I can go to the bank. I have something that I can go to the bank with. And for me, that is the most fundamental aspect of this entire exercise. We often say within our grouping that rent money is dead money. The Prime Minister echoed those sentiments. Most of us know that. It is better to own a home than to be renting for your entire life. Because you cannot claim that asset and you cannot take that asset to improve your standard of living and your children's standard of living. Because the bank would not recognize a rental property and lend you money on a rental property. In Bajan parlance, and as simple as it gets, you ain't own it, it ain't yours, so the banks and credit unions can't recognize it, right, member for St. James South? So when we transfer these units, and I know the member for St. James South is very happy because the electrical upgrade project started there, and it's 280 units that were indeed made right by the National Housing Corporation in Haynesville. And I will speak to that soon, but the whole aspect of home ownership touches the core. Housing, and I said in the budget as well, I use this expression, housing is an exemplary expression of the prosperity of a nation. It is an exemplary expression of the prosperity of a nation. So I know the member for the city, he wants to see the day when dilapidation in the city is, you know, it becomes history, a past, a thing of the past. The member for St. George North as well, she wants to see those houses opposite St. George Church and those houses transferred to those persons so they own them and they can go to the bank. That's being worked on by the ministry in conjunction with the Diocesan Society, the Anglican Church. These are the things that we have to do as a government. Empower the ordinary man and persons living in rural and urban Barbados. I often say, and I said it, I think it was one of the America's past presidents who said that a house is where you vote, a house is where you pay taxes, a house is where you educate. So when your land tax bill comes out, it goes to your home. When your electricity bill comes out, it goes to your home. All your bills, utility. So home ownership is fundamental. When your children return home from school and they go to their fixed places of abode, that's where they're educated. They spend some time at school, but they have something called homework and lessons. And we don't want to send all our children to the community centers, even though the member for St. John is doing some excellent work in ensuring that those who don't have electricity and those who have challenges go to the community centers, and indeed they're being schooled there. I want to thank you, member for St. John, who's carrying on the good work there. But we don't want all of our children to be going to these community centers. I love my home, and as a schoolboy, I love my home. When I get home, I love to do work at my table and watch a little TV. I think it is Sunday that I spoke to the big tube that we had back then. We had a flat screen. We had that big tube. Remember for St. George North? We had those tubes, right? Those big tubes we would watch. You don't want to go to any community center, you know? And we have now graduated to a flat screen. And I know every single house would love a flat screen. They are reasonable. And I'm happy that, you know, demand and supply allow these things, the prices of these things in the world to drop so that the ordinary man can get a laptop, can get a flat screen TV, and he can go on to Netflix and he can help educate him or her son and daughters. So this resolution, though it is simple, it is fundamental to allowing 300 households, most of which, not all members for St. Michael Southeast, not all from Southeast, but persons from the surrounding. And I asked the member for, even though I'm the Minister of Housing and Fair, I have asked for some for the member for St. James North and for myself. Some for St. George North, sorry. St. James North, I don't want to bring anybody from St. James to Hanson, to St. George in that area. I have asked for some for the member for St. Michael East, member for St. George North and St. George South, yours truly, so that we can indeed build up that settlement there with 300 ordinary Barbadians. And this will become a reality starting the financial year 2023-2024. And I am positive that this project will conclude in the year 2024-2025. I think it will take 2 years to complete. And vesting half of the houses in Hope, and I will speak to Hope. Hope Inc. was formed by this government to build some 1,500 houses annually in this country. Public-private company. Government is the only shareholder. And we have started the process. And I must say to you again, while persons believe that you can announce housing and see houses going up, that's not so. You have to engage in the infrastructure. And while we have some 154 units at Lancaster Vesper Gardens, I can say to you with a level of confidence that 72 of these units are finished in phase 1. The other 20 units in phase 1 will be completed within the next, by May 31st. And the legal team is working to close 100 of these sales by the end of April. And by the end of April, there's a lot of red tape in getting these things done. And if there's one thing that we have to work on, I'm not talking about breaking rules, I'm talking about stripping the level of bureaucracy so we can engage in execution in a more seamless manner. That's what this government is working on. So when you hear red tape, there is a red flag that is thrown. Similarly, when you see the rally cars, you see somebody throw a red flag, something wrong. So when you hear red tape, you know there's a level of bureaucracy that we have to cut through to transfer these homes to people. So 100 homes by the end of April will be transferred. We'll have home ownership at Lancaster. And the other 62 persons in phase 2 will have home ownership in the financial year 2023-2024. So we're looking at all 154 homes at Vesper Gardens to be owned by ordinary Barbadians, public servants, persons in the private sector by the end of the financial year. That project should be finished. We are also starting foundations, 12 townhouses and 69 houses at Pool in St. John. That work, the civil works, will be started in the month of April. And we are also starting works at Colleton. This is Hope again. In the month of April, where 85 houses will be built. I think at Pool it is 185, close to 201 houses at Pool. We have also cleared some 15 acres at Pleasant Hall in St. Peter to dig test holes before we begin to look at the whole acquisition purchase of land. And we have 100 acres of land at Vineyard in St. Philip. And if you multiply 100 acres by 10 houses per acre, you know Vineyard can take 1,000 houses easily. And if we improve that density to roughly 14 per acre, you see that we are not making any sport with respect to these houses and what Hope is doing. Hope is the acronym for Hope Ownership Providing Energy. And Hope basically has pioneered, or we can use the word innovate, the housing stock in this country by making housing more affordable to the ordinary man. And why I say that? They're utilizing photovoltaic, and you know this, but it's often worth repeating. Photovoltaic on the roofs of the houses. Go down Lancaster and you will see that the houses that are finished, the roofs are photovoltaic, they have panels on them, and they'll be powered by electricity. I mean by solar panels, sorry. The energy from the sun. And what this does for you, the ordinary man, it drives the cost of home ownership down. And that's why we're using the word affordable and resilient. Because there's nowhere in the world, I shouldn't say nowhere in the world, let me take that back, Mr. Speaker. But there are limited places in the world that you can have a 2-bedroom house that is valued at $350,000 being sold for $190,000. I would repeat, there are limited places where you can have a house valued at $350,000 being sold at $190,000. And why that is so? Because of the photovoltaic on the roof, the solar panels on the roof, and it also gives you, the landowner, some equity. Because the photovoltaic, the earnings and the takings from the photovoltaic, when we average that over the 15 years, allows that equity of $160,000 to cater to the infrastructural costs that you otherwise would have to fit and go to the mortgage lending company. 190 plus 160 is 350, and look for $350 to secure your mortgage. But as a result of the innovativeness of this company, utilizing photovoltaic, we are able to provide housing at an affordable cost. A 2-bedroom at $350, and a 3-bedroom that is valued at $415,000, member for Christ Church Best, will now go for $242,000. That's what we're doing as a government, making housing affordable. So half of the land at at Lower Burney, half of the 40 acres, well, it is actually 19.9 acres that we've invested in. And what type of housing will you see at Lower Burney? We currently have entered into a contract with Jorvilla, a company out of Guyana, to produce hardwood houses. And we have diversified the housing stock in this country. We are building like gauge steel houses, and I will speak to that briefly as I wrap up. And we have a few challenges there that we are working through, but I will speak to that shortly. Jorvilla, the house you saw in Queen's Park, is an example of what we are building across this country in terms of wooden houses. And I mentioned like gauge steel because we have diversified. We are not only using bricks and mortar, but we are utilizing like gauge steel houses. That is the East-West contract. And we are also looking at hardwood houses. And that house in Queen's Park will cost some $99,000. That's a 2-bedroom, outfitted with photovoltaic panels to drive the cost down. So the direct cost, or the cost of that house, is roughly around $130,000, but the selling price will be $99,000 as a result. A 2-bedroom hardwood house. And the 3-bedroom Jorvilla hardwood house, which is valued at $145,000, will be sold for as low as $119,000, $120,000. So when we go to Lower Burney in 12 months, you will see some of these houses. You'll also see some persons who currently reside in the Pinelands Estate, straight of the Pinelands Estate, moving over to Lower Burney because of the state of the housing stock within these estates. And this 40 acres was primarily acquired to address some of the challenges within the Pine, the largest estate that we have in this country. But we are not only building hardwood Joe Villa houses in the Pine, at Lower Burney. Presently, as I speak with you, work is going on at Clifton in St. Philip, where we are installing some 11 of the Joe Villa houses. Thus far, we have imported 30 houses into the country. The contract for houses this year were 350. We are still bringing in that 350, even though the end of the financial year is upon us. But we have signed a contract with Joe Villa to purchase 350 hardwood houses, and 30 of those houses are here. And month by month, starting next month, 100 houses will come to this country every month, every single month, until, so when you multiply 100 houses by 12, that's 1,200 hardwood houses that will come into this country annually. And they're going all over. Some will go to St. John. The member for St. John sent me, hunting. He said, I need some houses in St. John, and these are the places. And I took the National Housing Team to St. John, and we looked at the land, and there's some planning gains at Guinea, and you, the member for St. John, will form part of the team to decide what type of housing we take to St. John. That's your place, and we have to respect that. We also found some land in St. George North, member for St. George North, and likewise you will decide what type of housing we will have in St. George North within the cottage area, and you will be blessed shortly. We did a visit, and you also have a piece of land at Constant that we're seeking to acquire as well for additional housing in St. George North. We will not leave out for St. George. And I often say that the person who's blessed with the most land in this country is the member for St. Lucie. And indeed, he will get the majority because he has the most land. And the process has started. We've gone to Colleton. He's clapping. Mr. St. Lucie, the member for St. Lucie, I call it Mr. St. Lucie. And we intend to build out the housing stock across Barbados. So when you go to Colleton, you will see those houses, the foundations going up, and soon from now, those houses will be, and we will hand over keys to 11 persons in Clifton, and then we go to River Crescent in St. Philip again, where we will hand over keys to 25 persons. And I'm being told that Kensington New Road Urban Development Commission met with Hope only last week, a member for the city, and Kensington New Road indeed would have 15 hardwood houses as well in the city come the next financial year. It starts next week. So we are on a mission, and by no means we will achieve it in 2 days, but for sure we are on track once the financing keeps coming and once we get the necessary financing to build up the housing stock in this country. This leads me now to the other 20.6 acres that will be vested in National Housing Corporation. And National Housing Corporation, this is no news to Barbados. The Prime Minister announced it, that the SOEs will be restructured. And of course, I'm not privy to stand here and tell you what NHC will do tomorrow. We have to give respect to the trade unions in this country. Most of these workers are members of either trade union, Barbados Workers Union, or NUPW. And of course, the due process has to take place where this government sit with the unions before announcing what will happen at these state-owned enterprises. But what I can say to you is that we have shifted national housing mandate from building houses now to more maintenance of estates, because Hope has taken on the building of housing as a private-public company. And I said earlier, this would easy strain of the consolidated fund, and I spoke to you on how we'll finance these houses. We have also accessed the housing credit fund thus far to purchase the 350 houses from Joe Villa. But National Housing will continue engaging in joint venture partnerships where National Housing will provide the land, and they will have partners who will come in and put equity into the infrastructure and building of houses. This is no new model. We are presently executing one in St. James, ADC National Housing Joint Venture Project, where we're building 160 houses. And we are also executing a joint venture partnership at Atlantic Breeze in Christchurch, where 200 houses, a joint venture between NHC and Pre-Conco for 200 houses. We have asked persons, we have sent out in the newspaper, inviting persons to submit an expression of interest to engage in joint venture partnership with National Housing, so that National Housing will provide the land, but you, the joint venture partner, will be responsible for the building and the infrastructure. And at the end, of course, the sale of the house. The agreement would be between the joint venture partner and National Housing, where National Housing will receive some monies from the sale of each house. That is what is happening at Atlantic Breeze, where we are building some 200 houses. Can government build 10,000 houses on its own? No, can't. The Ridge development that we visited is a project being undertaken there by the private sector, and that is about 300 houses being built at Ridge. But why we have to count those houses? We provide, as a government, the enabling environment so that we can build houses in this country. Planning and development vets all the lands required for housing in this country, even the ones being built by government. That is the role of planning and development. And indeed, they would determine fit for purpose, fit for use with respect to land use in this country. And I am asking my colleague who sits next to me, the member for Christchurch West, who has responsibilities for planning and development, to ensure that the process of applications, the time taken to process applications, is significantly reduced. I am not, he has assured me that this will happen. Of course, we will not be. And he said this to me, the member for Christchurch West. He said to me, Minister Sutherland, don't expect we're going to break any rules, but we will make sure that we deconstruct and reconstruct to allow home ownership in this country in the most seamless way. Because that process of approval, it takes too long. Criticism of the member for Christchurch West. I think since he went into that office, he has done a lot of work in terms of speeding up the process. And he will tell you that he still has some work to do there. And I'm saying, if we are to build 10,000 houses, financing and the speed at which we approve applications when they go into town and country planning, this is still a problem for investors in this country. And every single one of them that you sit down and you speak with, they will tell you that process takes too long. And my friend from Christchurch West, my senior minister, I know he's on the ball, and he's doing his effort best to ensure that the whole process of approvals is indeed a seamless one. So National Housing responsibility in this will be to identify joint venture partners to build on the 20.53 acres. And indeed, they have identified a joint venture partner. This was done prior to me assuming office. And indeed, it was a seamless process and it was a transparent process. And that person will meet with National Housing and get the ball rolling with respect to housing. So you will see a different type of housing going on half of the land. But of course, our mandate as a government and the mandate with respect to this 40 acres is to make sure that the people in the 3 Pinelands estate are given their fair share of housing, and we address the density situation and the state of disrepair in those 3 housing estates, so that whether it is a joint venture partner or whether it is Hope on its own, the people in St. Michael Southeast and in the Pine especially will get their fair share of housing. Mr. Speaker, this brings me now to something that I think Barbadians have overlooked. And I spoke to it on Sunday. I mentioned it on Sunday. The whole electrical upgrade project that is being done across the 49 estates, housing estates. There's some 4,400 units across the estates. This government started a project back in 2019 to improve 2,687 units, the electrical upgrade of 2,687 units at a cost of some $21.6 million. That's the projection. We started in 2021 over a 4-year period. And we started, you know, it is often sad when we do things after some calamity, some catastrophe, some death, some fire. And that's why we started with the 280 units at Haynesville. And those units were repaired, 280 units. Then we went into Torps and Bagatelle in the pilot phase of the project. That made it 313 electrical upgrades that we did in the pilot project at a cost of, I think, $1.2 million. And why we did that? In Haynesville, 280, Bagatelle, 10, and Torps Gardens, 23 units. Why that was done? I spoke earlier to units being built in 1949, units being built in 1955, units being built in the 70s, units in the 80s. But the wiring back then was single phase, $110 volts. We have circuits, 2 and 4 and 6 circuits. The loading was some 4.8 kilowatts. We are now moving to loading 18.4 kilowatts, so we can have more systems in on these units, more breakers. The loading on the panels were indeed inefficient. And when you look at 2, 4, or 8 circuits at only 110 volts, you had a minimum probably of 1 or 2 outlet points per room. But over the years, persons in these units increased their loading. And how they increased the loading? Brought in the flat screen TVs, the microwaves, the toaster ovens, the washing machines. And you can't expect to bring in a loading of 16 kilowatt on a 4.8 kilowatt system. What will happen? Fire. And we had some fires in Haynesville. And that is why we have started this electrical upgrade. Presently, We have completed some 1,892, close to 1,900 units at a cost of $15 million. And when persons walk about this country and speak about this government ain't doing anything, which other government invested in electrical upgrades other than this government to the tune of 2,687 units, 687 units? We have gone about 70% thus far. And I believe when we finish this project, we will have touched on every single housing estate, the 49 estates across this country. And I believe the $21.6 million is not sufficient. But like I said before, we don't have a war chest of money sitting down. I use the word war chest. That's the term we use in the industry when persons say, well, you have money there spending, you got a war chest of money. This government, we do not have a war chest of money sitting down waiting. And I'm proud that we can impact the citizens of this country across the 49 estates by projecting close to 3,000 units at a value of $21.6 million, close to $22 million. And it is needed because if we don't do it, the 20-year transfer program will be unfair. Those citizens who lived in these units for 20 years would be unfair. We have to make these units right in an effort to transfer them to people across the 49 estates, so that persons in Haynesville, in Torps Gardens, in Bagatelle, St. Stephen's, Deacons, Ferniehurst, Rosemont, Eden Lodge, Watton, Wildy, Parkinson Field, the Pine, Silver Hill, Pleasant Hall, those form part of the 1,900 units that have been done thus far by the National Housing Corporation. And all 49 estates will get touched. Because when we did our assessment, we recognize that it is prevalent across all the estates, whereby persons have improved their standard of living by bringing in washing machines, by bringing in toaster ovens, air fryers. That's the thing now. Air fryers, digital ovens. That's the thing now. So we believe that this government, though recognizing that a project such as this magnitude will cost us a significant amount of money, we have embarked upon making wrong things right in these units. We have also engaged 17 contractors, along with the National Housing Electrical team. We have engaged some 17 contractors. 17. And each of these guys, they have their teams, and it worked out to close to 200 odd persons out of the private sector that have worked on these 1,900 units, 1,892 units. So when persons walk around this country and say, they're saying that we haven't done anything in this country, we have engaged, in addition to the electrical upgrades, 17 contractors, close to 200 workers, we have also engaged close to 400 contractors to rebuild houses from the effects of Hurricane Elsa and the freak storm. There are some, when we analyze the total, there were some 1,700 houses or so, just over 1,700 houses that were affected either by the freak storm or Hurricane Elsa. And we gave material to fix the houses to close to 250 persons who said they will do it themselves. And that was good on their part, because that took the ease off of government resources in terms of manpower. So we gave those persons the material, and I can say to you, since we came to Parliament last year, October, November, and amended the Catastrophe Fund Act, where we now have access to funding in the tune of close to $40 million, we've been able to restart the works to repair and rebuild those who were impacted by Hurricane Elsa. And I'm proud to report on behalf of this government that come end of May, we should have behind us the Hurricane Elsa project. All the houses, when we took out those houses where there are landlord and tenant challenges, where the landlord said to National Housing, don't build back a house on my land, we now have to find housing for those persons. But when we take those out of the equation, we are not giving them free houses, by the way. Those persons will have to buy land, of course. And when we take those out of the equation, it's some 1,400 houses, and at a cost of $100 million, just over $100 million to repair those houses. So when you add up the 21 million for the electrical upgrade, 100 million for the Hurricane Elsa repairs and rebuild, and the 12 million for the sewer system upgrade, then you tell me whether this government has invested in the housing stock or they have not. You can tell me. That's over 100 million for the Hurricane Elsa, 110 to be exact. Then 21 million for the electrical upgrade, 21.6. Count with me, that's 131.6. And then there's 12 million, 143, close to $150 million we have spent thus far, or will spend, in repairing houses in this country. Mr. Speaker, as I close, this government has set itself a huge mandate. It is achievable, like I said, with the support of planning and development and the financing that will come on board through the Blue-Green Fund initiative. This is the first of its kind in this country. And it is my wish that we, as a government, provide the necessary support for the ordinary man so they can become bankable, so they can move into the formal sector from the informal sector. Home ownership takes you into the formal sector, move you from the informal to the formal sector. Home ownership builds self-esteem. Poor housing is associated with ill health and decay in any country. And we must not take a project such as this one lightly. This is indeed a powerful project on behalf of the ordinary man to provide homes for them and the necessary support so that they can go to the bank and use their asset to improve their standard of living. So they can go to the bank and use their asset to get a loan for their children to go to university. So they can use that asset and go to the bank to buy a car. So they use that asset and go to the bank or credit union to improve their standard of living. And Mr. Speaker, I am charged with that responsibility, and I intend to continue this work of vesting lands in National Housing Corporation and in the Hope. We have some over 2,000 acres of land identified. And if you analyze that 2,000 acres of land can give you how much houses? It's 10 houses per acre. I am not telling you that we are going to build all those houses as you can multiply 2,000 by 10. But I say to you, we have in this country enough land to build the houses that we need. And from time to time, Mr. Speaker, I'll come to this chamber with resolutions such as this one to vest land into either Hope or National Housing Corporation so we can begin the process of building houses. And it starts here where the Parliament approved these resolutions so that we can get the process going of building houses across this country. And Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General has certified the resolution as being in order for consideration by this Honourable House, and it is hereby proposed that this resolution do now pass. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this particular resolution. Let me claim at the outset that there's absolutely no bias. Despite the fact that this particular resolution pertains to a potential housing development in certainly my constituency, in the constituency of St. Michael's Southeast, I see this, Mr. Speaker, as part of a wider policy of the government of Barbados to empower ordinary Barbadians to be able to own a piece of the rock, and a continuation of the legacy of this Barbados Labour Party in ensuring that people are able to acquire not just land, but also to be able to afford housing in this country. I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. George South, who spoke prior to me and introduced this particular resolution. I want to thank him because he not only attended my meeting on Sunday in the heart of St. Michael's Southeast to have to face the fire from constituents about the issue of housing, but he was able to deliver a very comprehensive explanation about the state of affairs in relation to housing, not only where we have come from, but also what we have been doing as a government, and certainly not only himself, but also his predecessors as well in housing, and what they've been working on, but also to give some reassurances to the people of St. Michael's Southeast and all those who had the opportunity to listen to the presentation, sir, as to what the focus of this administration is in relation to housing. As the Honourable Minister indicated, this is a project that will have an impact in the Lower Bernice area. It is as a result of planning gains that have been acquired through the Hanson plantation. It has the potential to be able to certainly enable persons to acquire for the first time homeowners an opportunity to own their own homes. But it also, and this is the part that is near and dear to me, sir, gives us an opportunity in the constituency to be able to ease a lot of the pressures, both social and economic, that are often faced by persons in densely populated communities such as the Pinelands and Wilde area by this particular project. Sir, you may recall back in 2018, many of us were rubbing shoulders in the Pinelands area, in particular the Golden Rock area. I think you were on the ground with me, going to several houses, touching and listening to the concerns of a number of the residents in the Pinelands estate. Many of my colleagues, sir, had the opportunity, like you, to be able to see what I consider to be a sad tale of how we did not progress as a nation in relation to housing development in the estates, the housing estates. As you know, the Pinelands area is one of the largest housing estates in the country. I'm always mentioning the fact that it is the oldest and the largest, and therefore it is therefore in need of prioritizing in terms of improvement to the social conditions in that particular area. But as we did the walkthrough back then, it was clear, I think, to my colleagues and certainly the then leader of the party that this particular community in Golden Rock required a different type of attention. Sir, many of the colleagues would have recalled, I mean, you saw about 15 people coming out of a single unit. The construction of the roofs were in dire need of repair. There were significant issues in relation to the electrical fittings at the various properties. In some cases, when you look at some of the breakers look like they've been there since the 1800s, quite frankly. And we've had a fair share of fires, as have other housing estates across the country, as a result of a failure to be able to repair and to upgrade a number of these facilities over the infrastructure over the years, sir. We've also had, and members would have seen the challenges in terms of the lack of maintenance in relation to the sewering systems. A number of the wells had been broken. A number of them had not been covered properly. And therefore, we even lost the life of one of our young males within the community, as members are well aware. But sir, while we recognize in 2018 all of these concerns, again, as I keep telling people, we did not come to office just simply criticizing the former administration, but we understood that when we came to office that we had a job to do to correct a number of these deficiencies, these inequalities within our society, and we immediately started the process of so doing. And there on the pasture of Golden Rock, the recreational area in the center of the Pinelands area, the then leader of the party and now the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, as well as the Honourable Prime Minister, made a commitment to the people of that area that upon assuming office, that we would ensure that the people of this particularly dense area in the Pinelands area would be given an opportunity through planning gain opportunities as they arose to be able to ease the pressure, to be able to give some relief to persons in overcrowded conditions and some of the other conditions that I've highlighted. We, therefore, on coming to office, sir, and I don't think that the Pinelands area is unique in any way, but it does have some peculiarities in terms of the cluster of accommodation. It's very similar to the city in many respects. And we share a number of similarities in that respect in relation to the type of accommodation within the city and the need for improvements in those general areas. And therefore, I don't know that the Pinelands and Wildy area can claim that it has been the cause of the revolution that we hear the Honourable Minister speak about today. But I know that it has played a large part in certainly our discussions at the level of cabinet, because we recognize that the improvements or the opportunities that could be created by being able to revisit the housing, the lands that were available through the Ministry of Housing, and to ensure that we were able to identify lands across the country to be able to let the National Housing Corporation have the opportunity to look at both joint venture arrangements, but also entering into the arrangement with the Hope Inc., would bring to this country a further opportunity for people to be able to own a piece of the rock. Now, sir, many people may feel that, well, you know, why are we doing so much for the people in the housing estates? Well, I must tell you, sir, some of the best and the brightest have come out of the housing estates in this country. We have had leaders in various fields coming out of the housing estates. There are people that I know that have their businesses well established and will not move out of the Pine. They will not leave the Wildy area. Sir, they continue to live in the housing estate and to make whatever necessary repairs are needed to their houses, so long as they have the means to do so. Because they love the community, they are from the community, and they are prepared to continue to invest within the community that has given them the greater part of their lives, sir. We also recognize that a number of the social issues that were confronting the Pinelands and Wildy community was also as a result of this overcrowding and these poor conditions. So it can't be easy when people have to wake up every day, the fittings in the house broken down, you don't have any firewalls within the building that adjoins another property right next to you. You have issues of sewage arising from time to time. It cannot be easy to have to come up and to raise a family in those conditions, particularly knowing that there's been such great neglect over the years in relation to paying very specific attention to easing some of the pressure in these communities. We also recognize that we saw, in particular in some areas in the Pinelands community, an increase in crime as a result of people in the overcrowded conditions, obviously flexing their muscles sometimes, because people get angry when they are in closed spaces. People get angry when there's one fridge in the house, 15 people, and you have to basically try to work out who the bottled water or the juice belongs to, and to make sure that nobody can take up what you brought in with your hard-earned money. These are our realities. These are my realities that I face on a daily basis in my constituency, sir. I have been fortunate to have come up in a household where I have had very loving, caring, guiding parents, and I'm well aware that not everybody has been fortunate to have the same. It is for that reason, sir, that I am very passionate about this particular project, because I recognize that a lot of the instability that takes place within a number of these communities is as a result of the closeness. It is as a result of the inability for people to be able to breathe. It is as a result of the cluster of people within a household, the taking of turns as to when you sleep and when you don't sleep, when you go outside and when you come back in. The fact that sometimes even it results in some very incestuous situations within the houses, because the children, especially the younger children, often end up, because of the close nature of the sleeping arrangements, often get interfered with, sir. These are our realities. And therefore, when we pay attention to densely populated communities, sir, we do so because we appreciate that their problems are in turn our problems. If we don't fix them, sir, they end up before you in the law courts. You will be called upon to represent them, as have many of us, certainly in this chamber and other places. And therefore, we have to position ourselves on every occasion to ensure that we ease a bit of the pressure that people are facing within these types of communities. I have had, sir, I think I've been in office for 10 years. Myself and the Honourable Member for St. George South recently celebrated 10 years as elected MPs. I had the opportunity to serve in the Senate previously, so I've been in politics for 13 years officially. But sir, within that time, I have lost a number of people through gun violence, through other violence within the densely populated areas of my constituency. Primarily because, and I'm not going to say it's because of housing conditions alone, but because I've alluded to the fact that there's a pressure that builds up when people don't have the space that is needed within these communities. I have also had to go through a lot of very tragic circumstances, because not only do people not know how to handle their anger, but in very close communities, you lose your fuse very fast. And something that may require how you and I may perhaps try to reason certain things out, people often respond in a very passionate way, and it often results in the death of individuals, sir. That is what I have seen in densely populated areas. In all of the other built-up residential areas, sometimes you don't even know your neighbor. So there's very little chance often of being able to collide with anybody or to quarrel with anybody. But we all know that the major issues, and I know the Honourable Minister heard all about them on Sunday, the issues of people using gramoxone and mixing it with all kind of weed killers outside of your housing unit, and endangering, in some cases, through the smell of the fumes and stuff, persons who reside next door to them, sir. These are the realities. We have people who come into these communities, who live in the communities. They're trying to set up their businesses. They got mechanic shops that have started with 1 or 2 cars and turned into a whole operation with 40 and 50 cars coming at a time, sir. You can't get rid of them in no time soon. These are the realities of people living in very closely connected communities and very densely populated communities, sir. Housing, therefore, while it is not the only reason why we have a number of our social and economic issues within this country, sir, is as important as getting a job, as important as being able to have opportunities created for people, sir. It is as important as building out the infrastructure in this country. And if we are to be fair to ourselves, the fact that there are people living in some of these densely populated communities who sometimes, because the light may be off or the water may be off, sir, I've seen children have to go in Arrowbarrow Park and do their homework under the street lights in the park because of the challenges that were faced in the households, because it was overcrowded, because the children could not work, sir, because it was too noisy, in the environment. Somebody playing a radio, somebody playing the fool, somebody doing things, sir, that will impact on children's ability to learn. It is the reason why we have said we're developing more of the facilities in the community centers. It is the reason why I inherited a constituency from certainly my father's days, because I was born in 1976. My dad came in. The Pine was known for P for Perry, P for Pine, P for Perry, P for prison. Perry was the magistrate at the time, and everybody in the Pine knew that if you got into trouble and you went before this magistrate, you were going to prison. And that was the type of stigma that was associated with this community, which is why he spent the greater part of his time as the elected representative, focusing on the community centers, making sure that people got a house and access to housing within the community, sir. It is why he focused on sending them and doing what the Honourable Member for St. Peter is working on, sending them on the farm labor programs overseas so that they could get a better way of life. So it is why he focused on making sure that every community within the Pine and Wildy area and the outskirts as well, all up Haggett Hall, sir, had an opportunity to have a dedicated space for recreation where people could engage in cricket and netball activities and football, sir. It is why the Pinelands community has been one of the most vibrant in this country, because it was also one of the first to be able to have lights placed on a number of the pavilions, sir. And I'm pleased that we as a government have recognized the importance of being able to do what I consider these simple things, sir. Because if the house is overcrowded and you got to be on the outside, at least the outside must be comfortable, sir. And you must be able to keep people engaged for longer. When people come home from work, if the house is crowded, sir, they want to go outside and they want to do a little scrimmaging, they want to play a little game of football. If you have the lights, if you have the mini stadia built out in this country, sir, it gives us an opportunity to keep people engaged in our communities. And I therefore thank the Honourable Prime Minister for heeding the call to be able to expand the mini stadia across this country, and certainly the Honourable Member for St. John for being able to put those measures in place. I certainly am awaiting the bleachers and the lighting that has been promised to me to upgrade a number of the existing facilities, sir. But it is, I say that I understand the importance of these things because I have seen the transition of a community, because there was a focus on things like housing, there was a focus on getting employment, there was a focus on ensuring that people got opportunities to set up their businesses and to get outside of the country, to go onto various programs, sir. And this Labour Party administration has been at the forefront of that transformation in these particular densely populated communities across this country, sir. It is the reason why people will be critical from time to time of us being able to make sure that we relocate people when we find that they're in conditions that are not suitable for certainly good health for them and certainly for the country. Why we take a position on areas like the Bell and Bellevue and Bailey's Alley, sir. It is why we have moved the people from Rock Hall. It is why when we find ourselves in situations where there is slippage, as in what has transpired in the White Hill area and certainly in the Chalky Mount area, we don't sit by, sir. We've made sure as a cabinet, and the Honourable Member for St. George South is well aware, that these are issues which occupy the attention of the cabinet, because we understand the importance of housing. Being able to have shelter, have a roof over one's head is important to every single individual in this country, sir. And so this project that has been brought by the Honourable Minister, I really want to thank him. He said on Sunday that I behave as though I am a minister within his ministry. And I'm the Minister for St. Michael's Southeast, of Housing in St. Michael's Southeast. But I do so, sir, because of what I see as a pivotal part of the change that has to take place in these communities. I would love to see a situation, sir, where when we are able to ease some of the pressure in these densely populated communities, that we get to a point where we can start to knock down some of the structures that exist, and we are able to build back better and to make those properties even more resilient. I would like to see a point, sir, where we recognize that we have larger families in some cases in these communities. We have old people who are not able to get upstairs in the units anymore, and many of them have had to move downstairs. I get requests daily for a single bed so that an old person can come downstairs of their unit and be able to not have to climb the stairs, sir. We have to be nimble in the way that we approach housing. And if it means that as we move out people, we're able to make assessments on the various blocks and to be able to open up spaces to be able to make larger units or to transform those existing structures, then that, sir, I think is what has to be the next layer of what we have to do in relation to these housing projects. Because I don't want a situation, sir, where we move some people out, but then we create another problem because we haven't addressed the infrastructural issues that exist within those communities. Now, the Honourable Minister has pointed out very clearly that we've started the upgrades of a number of the wells within the communities of the Pinelands Estate. I think Haynesville has also been a beneficiary of that project. We've spent millions of dollars since coming to office to be able to do these upgrades. And it is not to say that every area has been done as yet, because it takes money in order to be able to get these things done. But the process has started, and I can say without fear of contradiction that priority has been given to the Pinelands community, because there was a time when you drove through the constituency, you walked through the constituency, and you had to be cautious in terms of stepping on a broken well cover. You weren't sure, because the areas weren't properly debushed, whether or not there was a well somewhere waiting to suck you in, sir. And we have come a long way within the last few years of this administration, being able to make those transitions. We've also taken a position that you can't convey to people things which have no value. The mindset that some people have had in this country, that it was a nice quick election gimmick that you tell the people that you own the houses after the 20 years, but not have the conversation with the people that the roof's falling apart, the walls 2 inches thick, the fact that there's no proper sewage system, no electrical upgrades. They didn't want to have those conversations. They told the people, oh, you're going to get the houses after 20 years. But nobody was prepared at the time, sir, to have those realistic conversations with the population about the state of affairs in relation to these housing estates. 1949, sir, is what we're talking about in terms of when these units were actually constructed. The ones in the Pine, I know we had a situation, I think when my dad was a representative, where we started to move out persons from the Pinelands area into the Wilde Gardens area. This type of project is not new to the Barbados Labour Party administration. We've done it before in terms of making sure that we look at lands that are nearby to our constituencies and be able to ensure that people who, again, live in densely populated communities are able to have that opportunity to be near to where they have grown up. Because in many cases, you're leaving behind maybe an old lady or old man, a father figure or somebody within the household, but that you are still near to the community from whence you came to be able to still give back to that community. And therefore, the proximity with which the area at Hanson and Lower Bernice is being created, sir, is certainly still within close proximity to and within the constituency of St. Michael Southeast, which means that I get to still hold on to some of my people. But it also means that I ain't selfish either, sir, because I know that if the shoe was on the other foot, my colleagues would also share the same view that while you want to ease the pressure in your community, they equally have, sir, persons who also are living below par, persons who need an opportunity because they've got 5, 10, 15 people in a household to be able to have the opportunity to have one of the housing opportunities that are available, sir. And it is for that reason that while this project, in all fairness, started out being of 40 acres for the densely populated nature of St. Michael Southeast, it has been shaved down to the point now where we have 20 acres to St. Michael Southeast and 20 acres to the private development project that is going to be done. I expect, sir, that while, yes, St. Michael Southeast will be the primary beneficiary, that I have no issue with making sure that we are fair in the share to our other neighboring constituencies and anybody who is in dire need to be able to get housing, sir. Because at the end of the day, it is not about the upliftment of St. Michael Southeast to the detriment of anybody else. But I take the opportunity to make it clear that the densely populated nature of communities requires sometimes a different approach and a prioritization that may require us to do things a little bit different. And I'm therefore grateful to this administration for being able to accelerate this particular project to empower the persons in my community. The Lower Bernice project, sir, just a few acres down as well, was also a project that was started under the Barbados Labour Party administration. The first phase of that development, you may recall, was a project that saw the relocation of persons from the Churchview area, just here in town. And I therefore have a number of the Lucians and the Vincies as well from the city who reside in St. Michael's Southeast. I'm grateful for them because they enrich our community in Lower Bernie. But we had to look as a government at the relocation of persons who, again, the conditions in which they were living were not conducive, sir, to a good living arrangement. And we were able to move these persons, to relocate those persons into the Lower Bernice area. There were a number of joint venture projects with the then Barbados Labour Party administration through the NHC, which resulted in persons being able to own their own homes. They were able to acquire the land, I would have to say almost at next skin to nothing, because I mean, you were paying about $20,000 or so to be able to get the lands, 20,000 square feet, no, it was about 3,000 square feet or less that the lands were. But persons were able, again, not to pay any significant amount of money for those lands. And we have seen the development of a community in the Lower Bernice area over the course of the last few years, which in some cases, while it is a very settled community, it has brought together a number of people from different areas, which has enriched it in some ways. But as what happens in most neighborhoods, when you take people from different places, you often end up now with people not necessarily coming together and gelling in the same way. And therefore, my hope is that by moving some of the people from the Pinelands community, again, you will have some sharing of individuals within those communities of familiarity. Hopefully, they will then be able to interact with the wider Lower Bernice community and be able to enrich that particular area. But it also gives a prime opportunity to be able to access all of the amenities which many persons are already accessible to within the Pinelands housing estate. So they already have access to the schools. The Blackman and Gollop School is just around the corner from this particular project. You have all of the churches in the surrounding areas, sir. You have the area there at the Haggett Hall Junction. And there is therefore an already lively community which exists within the Lower Bernice area. So, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased that this administration, from its early days of being able to provide land to the people of this country at $2.50 a square foot under the Tom Adams administration, has been able to transition to a point where we are able to give ordinary Barbadians an opportunity to now own a piece of the rock, but with the added incentive of now having renewable energy attached to part of the development as well of their homes, and to bring down the cost as well to the average individual. Sir, when I look at what is being proposed in terms of these particular houses, I think the proposal from Hope is to build over 150 houses through the Juravilla project. These houses are expected to withstand a Category 3 hurricane. And what perhaps blesses my heart, sir, is that we're talking about ordinary people, people earning below $2,500 a month, being able to have the opportunity to own a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house with a sum of $99,000, sir. If it is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, I think the Honourable Minister indicated that those figures are likely to be around 120,000. And sir, I want to say that I don't know anywhere else in the Caribbean, I don't know anywhere else in the world that a project of this magnitude exists, a project that is bringing relief directly to people, and a government that is providing solutions, not just for those at the very, very top, but also, sir, for those at the bottom as well, and certainly the ones in the middle also. Because we can, yes, we can make the money from the private investments and the people who can afford to go out and get the mortgages, but we also have to continue to take care of the people who are most vulnerable, who are barely making ends meet, but need to be in a position to be able to relocate, to be able to properly raise and to sustain their families as well. The Honourable Minister has spoken extensively about the government's wider housing program. I would hope that within this particular project in Lower Burney, and I think we will have some discussions on it, there's also the intention to be able to have some rental units, because irrespective of those persons who will earn under $2,500, that will qualify for the mortgage arrangements in these instances. You also, sir, have those persons who, through no fault of their own, may not be working, they may have disabilities, they may be elderly, and still have to be accommodated somewhere, because that is the nature of what we do as a government. And I would encourage that within the housing policy that is rolled out, that we ensure that there is a percentage of the housing stock that is going to be constructed through this project that still continues to provide for rentals, whether it is the $35 or the $60 or $100 a week, to be able to allow persons to still have that opportunity, if they so choose to rent, to be able to do so. If they choose to go forward and they want to rent to own, that I think is a matter for them. But we still have to look out for those who will not be able to qualify for the mortgage and that are still at the most vulnerable, and therefore need an opportunity to be able to have a roof over their heads. And I believe that, consistent with our position on disabilities in this country, we will certainly make the necessary provision within the accommodation stock in this Lower Burney project to ensure that persons with disabilities are properly accommodated by this particular project. So, sir, I am satisfied that I, as a representative, that I have done all that I can possibly do up to this point to make the lives of my colleagues miserable on every occasion, sir. I make no apologies for my behavior at times, and the fact that I remind them on many occasions that it is the people of St. Michael's Southeast who sent me to this place, and therefore I understand fully what my responsibility is to them. I cannot leave politics in good measure without ensuring that, not that I just build a road, sir, or that I do the basic things that I am expected to do, sir. But as I said before, I grew up with an understanding that service meant that you also had to provide housing, you have to provide opportunities, you have to ensure that you get people in employment, sir. Those are the things that at the very basic matter to people. We can help to provide the utilities, the assistance to be able to help people, sir, from time to time in the welfare, but people, if they're given an opportunity to get a start, sir, they don't disappoint. I've seen it with our ASH workers. They were given an opportunity to go and get work in the first place. They were given an opportunity to continue on the program, sir. They were then given an opportunity to access training, and many of them have taken up the challenge, and they have tried to turn their lives around, sir, and to be productive citizens in this country. We must always be on the forefront of being able to create opportunities in this country for our people. I am not going to get into any rhetoric on what the last administration do, because I am satisfied that from 2018, with all that this administration has faced, we have kept on a certain trajectory to be able to provide housing at the highest level, the middle income level, and to the most vulnerable. Are we moving as fast as we would like? Well, we had asphalt to deal with, we had a pandemic to deal with, and we had all of the issues in terms of, even with the Chinese houses, of being able to get the permits to get people into the country. It has not been without its challenges. But is our commitment still the same to making sure that we build these 10,000 houses, sir? I think the commitment remains the same to this day. And I know that the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, along with the Honourable Member for St. George South, continues on a daily basis. I know they meet with me as well in the Utilities Committee. And with respect to all of the housing projects, there are plenty housing projects that exist on our agenda on a weekly basis. The Honourable Minister, Senior Minister will tell you. And we have to go through in fine detail to make sure that people, not just that you're getting houses, but you're making sure that you got the infrastructure that is necessary in order that when the houses come, because the house is supposed to take, 6 weeks to build, to be erected, that when those houses come and they're erected, sir, that the infrastructure is in place. Because it would not be a very pretty thing if we end up with houses, but we don't have the roads, and we don't have the MPC, and we don't have the telecommunications, utilities, and we don't have the water, sir. And the internet, because they can't live without the internet. So the reality is that this does not happen by us simply making pronouncements. We heard all the pronouncements previously, but we have actually gone past the pronouncements now, and we meet regularly to go work through the teething issues. And I ain't gonna stand here and tell you there don't be teething issues. There are plenty of teething issues. But our commitment remains the same in terms of whether it's cleaning the list at NHC to see who really needs housing, because we can't ignore the fact that people feel that a politician can recommend the person for the house, or that you had to do things that you didn't want to do back in the day to get a house in this country, sir. We are creating different opportunities because it is distasteful that especially our women have come to believe that sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do in order to get accommodation in this country, sir. And I take great offense to those who have put out there that that should be the way that women in this country access accommodation. And therefore, even in St. Michael's Southeast, my position is very clear, and I make no bones about it. The people who are most vulnerable in the community, where I know it is very easy for me to pinpoint who are the households that have 15 and 16 and 17 people in them. And whenever the social survey is done by the Ministry of Housing, they can confirm any information that is provided to them at the easiest opportunity. You just have to walk through the pine and you are going to find the people living in the houses, sir. There ain't gonna be no people that come from outside of St. Michael's Southeast that are going to be recommended for the social survey to be done, sir, because there are too many of them that need housing. And for the 20 acres and the 150 houses that will be built, sir, I could do it another 150. I could do it all, the full 40 acres, sir. But I understand that Rome wasn't built in a day. And therefore, 150 for me, or even 100 of the 150, sir, is way better a position that I will be in my constituency than when I started in 2018, sir. And I'm grateful to this Barbados Labour Party administration on behalf of the people of St. Michael's Southeast for making wrong things right, sir, for being able to give relief to the people, and for the most important thing, sir, for making a promise to the people. The Prime Minister says she don't make promises, but she made a promise to St. Michael's Southeast, sir. And I stand here today proud that that promise has been kept, that the pleas of the people of the constituency have been answered, and the priorities will be given to the people of my constituency to have access to adequate housing, sir. With those few words, sir, I am obliged.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support what was shared so far by the Honourable Member for St. George South, and indeed what was spoken by the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East, because she has echoed the realities that we live within St. James South and the challenges that occur within the housing estate program. And I want to be able to applaud the government for the fact that, yes, promises were made and promises are being kept. I campaigned rigorously for the electrical upgrades for Haynesville because of the plight of women, of homeowners who had to be afraid when the nights came, were afraid when they were at work that a phone call was to let them know that the house was on fire. And we had between 5 families that had their properties damaged severely and had to find a way to get started again. And sir, that is one of the most frightening things that you can experience. So I want to sincerely applaud the government for the electrical upgrade. But that was not all that was done in St. James South. In West Terrace Gardens, between West Terrace Gardens and Durance Village, there was a piece of land that very hastily, just before the 2018 election, a billboard went up about a housing project there. And sir, not a thing was done in relation to that project. One or two houses got started and it petered out. But when this government came to office, I am happy to say that again, a promise had been made to the people in St. James South, and that promise was kept. We now have a number of homes going up in that area that is affording for young middle-class families, one of the few places in which I have young families, to be able to have their own home, get a mortgage, and it's growing day by day, and that's a new community for me to serve. So I want to sincerely applaud that. Along with that has been the advent of ELSA. One of the hardest hit areas in my constituency, sir, was Durance Village. The housing stock in that vicinity is not good, and therefore extremely vulnerable, very vulnerable to hurricane events and storms, etc. And I want to compliment the UDC for the efforts that they've started in relation to the repairs that have been needed, because so many homes found themselves with water coming in and found themselves with situations where their houses were unsafe. And we were able to help a number of people, especially older people, to get them back on a good and solid footing, and we're looking forward to the remainder of those repairs. Now, sir, as with the rest of the country, housing in Barbados is a challenge. With that huge list that we have down at NHC and in the Ministry of Housing, it tells us that it is a priority and is at a crisis level. What I have in St. James South is a situation where, because of COVID, because of the economic downturn, a number of young people who had gradually made their way into renting apartments, took their little families with them or started their families within those apartments, then found themselves without work, found themselves unable to be able to pay and maintain the rent or to maintain themselves in those homes, and eventually had to find their way back to their maternal home. And in many cases, it resulted in severe overcrowding in a number of units all through the Haynesville area. And therefore, the need for housing really is at a critical crisis point. But it's not only in Haynesville. Within St. James South, you have a number of older communities where I have a number of senior citizens. We anticipate in a few years that the average age of Barbadians will be over 60. Well, sir, in St. James South, the majority of my residential areas really have people who are over 60, a number of people who've been in retirement for a long time. And with the escalation of prices, the escalation of the cost of building and repairs and maintenance, it has reached a stage where some of those seniors have found it really difficult to be able to do the maintenance on their properties. Now, many of them own those properties, but being able to keep it in a good working condition, being able to keep it in a good saleable condition has been a challenge for a number of our seniors. And therefore, I am truly grateful for the housing program which the Honourable Member for St. George South has announced in terms of its capacity to assist us in providing alternative housing for people within St. James South, as I also welcome with deep joy the area of the reverse mortgage program, which will be a boon for our seniors in those various communities, whether it's Wanstead, Terrace, Paradise, Heights, Husbands, Sir, Oxners. Many of them would benefit significantly from that reverse mortgage program, which will allow our seniors to take care of themselves and to be able to remain in their homes. So I'm deeply grateful for this. But sir, there are a couple of things that I want to draw to the attention of the Honourable Chamber and through you to Barbados that will need to be done if our housing program is to be complete and to be revolutionary. On the one hand is the acquisition of the land, the construction of the houses, the revolutionary idea of using the photovoltaics program to help reduce the cost. All of these are innovative approaches to providing housing solutions that Barbadians desperately need. But I want to say that on the other side, there has to be that preparation of the society, of the citizens for this type of housing program. One would be, we have to be able to transition our contractors, our construction workers, etc., Because if you listen carefully to what the Honourable Member for St. George South said, they're using new technologies now in their approach to building new houses. This means we have to help our artisans to develop the necessary skills to be able to function with these new technologies and therefore can be a part of this building program. And therefore, the Construction Gateway program that would be sponsored by the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic, that would be instituted by them. I want to say to them to ensure that those new technologies are part of those training programs to allow our contractors to make the transition to what would be a new era of housing here in Barbados. And I believe that to be important. I can only be very grateful that the Honourable Member for Christchurch West is going to be working further on speeding up the town planning approval process. Because again, in St. James South, I have a number of young contractors eager, using innovative solutions, who want to be a part of this revolution in housing and to become a part of, to participate in the prosperity that can come from this construction boom. And therefore, they too are awaiting the approval of their applications to town planning so that they can get involved in this revolution. So there's a lot to offer for the good people of St. James South and indeed in Barbados. But there's also another area, sir, that is of concern to me. And I believe the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast touched on some of them. These are some of my observations in relation to what is going on within our communities. Sir, along with the overcrowding, which is bringing a level of dysfunction within our families and have deeply stressed them, especially when they had to go through COVID, it has been a challenge so that many of our children and many of our households live with a certain measure of conflict and irritation on a daily basis within their homes. One, because of the size, the number of people, the inability to provide for the needs of everyone, so they rub against each other. The frustration sometimes, sir, of not being able to get a job. All of these add to the conflict that can go on within a home. But it has spilled over, sir. One of the things that I have noted is that there is a rising level of lack of consideration for one's neighbor. I am increasingly getting complaints from neighbors for the conduct of fellow neighbors in relation to things that, sir, prior to this, Barbados did not have to supervise or superintend. Sir, we have people who are not considerate, and whether it is trees overgrown and not trimmed, and therefore affecting the neighbor, whether it is on sanitary conditions obtaining on a person's property, and they feel that if they're okay with it and they're at them, it doesn't matter that it is discommoding and challenging the health of their neighbors, whether it is burning stuff that affects the health of neighbors, there is a lack of consideration. Even something as simple, sir, as a hedge, where people don't understand that when you build a hedge, there's a certain height it needs to be. And if it is causing a visibility problem for people exiting a particular road and making it dangerous for traffic to exit because they simply cannot see the oncoming traffic, and when spoken to, too many people are indifferent to the inconvenience that they are creating for their neighbors. And sir, this gives me a challenge. Because we're living in a more sophisticated world. We're living in a world where we have bigger populations. We have to find new ways of doing community. And we have to be sure that communities are actually functioning in a harmonious and a responsible way. I reflect on what is happening in the developed countries, whether you're talking about Norway, Sweden, whether you're talking about Switzerland, etc. There's certain rules that govern what homeowners must do, what are the responsibilities of citizens when they live in community. There are areas, there are countries where you have to clean and shovel your sidewalk, your walkway. You have to make it safe in the winter. You're responsible if someone gets hurt. There are countries where there are fines for if you do not sort your garbage according to the recycling program that would be existing in that country. Up to 250 euros you have to pay if you have not sorted your garbage in the receptacles appropriately. If you put out your garbage on the wrong day. Now, when I first heard those things, they sounded so draconian. I said, my goodness, well, that feels like a police state. But then I reflected, how does a country work with its citizens to help them to build the new disciplines when we are transitioning to a new way of living? How do we help the average householder to understand that they have responsibility for not only what goes on inside of their home, but what also goes on the outside? We've seen the problems that we've had with littering. I know the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central will be looking at legislation to help citizens to understand what responsible community living is about. Sir, we have situations where we have given householders a receptacle to put the garbage in, which is designed to be picked up by the trucks on that motorized system that relieves the sanitation worker from the burden of lifting heavy objects and tossing them. There are times, sir, when there are challenges in relation to additional disposal of additional refuse that overflows from out of that one bin. And sir, the challenge we have is that people put it on the roadside. Dogs get at it. The sanitation workers do not pick it up. And then we have a problem across the community. Sir, one of the things that we must do when we are doing home ownership in Barbados is to teach Barbadians about responsible citizenship and the responsibilities of a homeowner. It is not only about acquiring the house, it is also about managing living in community. We have issues, sir, in relation to being able to work together. And I think that this is one of the things that we need to do, because as we're looking at what we want to achieve, for example, in the housing estates, how are we going to deal with the maintenance of those estates when the citizens become owners of those units? How do we help them to understand that the common areas then are a responsibility that they must carry? How do we educate them to understand that? And why should we? One of the challenges that we have, sir, is that there is a notion in Barbados that everything I do not wish to do, the government should pick up the cost. And what is challenging for people to understand is this, sir. Every time government has to step in and create an intervention to deal with a matter, whether it is bulk waste, whether it is lots that are left unclean, etc., it means that government must find additional persons to hire to actually execute that. They have to buy a set of equipment. They have to monitor and ensure that the tasks are carried out. Every year, the cost of doing that actually rises. So where will we get the money from? This is where increases in taxes then occurs unless the economy has earned the money to carry the additional cost. I think that this is what is missed by the average citizen, that the more demands you make on government, the higher your tax levels will go. And when that happens, it makes it more difficult for you to live your individual life. This is why there is a need for a conversation in Barbados to help Barbadians discuss and agree what are the things that we must take care of as citizens and take responsibility for, both within our home and in our community. that it is sometimes easier, it is often cheaper for a community to come together and pool some resources to take care of a problem, or to better discipline their own behavior so they do not create the problem in the first place, so that our cost of living in Barbados can be better managed. And that is a conversation that we have to have with Barbadians. I'm going to be having that conversation with my constituents in relation to our work with the Neighborhood Watch. Sir, there are challenges where people have dismantled something or gotten rid of something. Instead of calling the bulk waste to pick it up, they just drop it next door, on the lot next door, or on a corner in a community. And then it creates vermin. And then what happens? It becomes a nuisance to the others around them. It is that type of behavior, sir, that needs to be addressed. And there are good people in our communities who understand that this is not appropriate, and therefore they're frustrated, they're angry, to recognize that there are some people, and you only need one or two on a street to make a whole community miserable, you know, sir. And this is why bringing the communities together, let us talk through what are the things we are going to do together as a community to help keep our environment clean and to ensure that we honor our responsibilities as citizens and homeowners. I have to commend, sir, the neighborhood watches in my area. I have two in particular that are outstanding. All of them work together to try to manage the issue of security and crime. And I really have to thank the Barbados Police Service for their tremendous support and their work with the administrators and the members of the neighborhood groups to help manage crime within our communities. But one of the things that two of my communities in particular have done, they have banded together to make sure, for example, that the common areas, the recreational areas, they band together and keep those clean. When there is a problem, they discuss it and they call the relevant agency to get the assistance. If they have a problem with getting a response, they'll get in touch with me, and I will make the necessary calls to ensure that a proper response is made. And I really have to thank some of the government units that when I call, some of them will try to help or explain why they're having a challenge or difficulty. But that is the level that we have to bring our citizenship to. Now, we have a number of citizens who would have lived overseas for a long time, and therefore this type of living and this type of responsibility is normal, natural to them. And therefore, they tend to be concerned when they find that some residents don't understand this part of their responsibility. And many of them are very willing to work in the community to help others to understand there's certain things that we have to take care of by ourselves, and there are things that government has to take care of. And if we work hand in hand, collaboratively, we will have a smooth running community. I want to make a general appeal too as well on this matter of community living and home ownership. We have some communities, sir, that have very narrow gaps. And unfortunately, you have people who may tend to park on the road. That makes it very, very difficult for the sanitation truck, a fire truck, etc., to get through safely to respond to an emergency. So I want to make a plea for us to be considerate of that and try to use our own driveways and garages to park our vehicles to allow for the safe and easy passage of these vehicles, that they can do the necessary work for all of the citizens. Now, sir, there are two things that I am making an appeal to my colleagues for us to consider. I know that the Honourable Member for St. George South has spoken about the necessity of the repairs to the estates. It's true. Some of the homes are in very bad repair, leaking of the walls, etc., doors, etc. And we're looking at what can be done to put them in better order for them to get ownership of them. And I think that is important, that this is a priority. But I also know that they're looking at what can be done in relation to the participation of the estates in the solar energy program. I am eagerly looking forward to some type of solution that would allow for some type of participation by housing estates in the whole photovoltaic program. I believe that it can be done. This government has not been stumped on any level. They have always been able to come up with a program, and I am looking forward to us being able to ensure that all of the estates will be able to participate in this. Now, in relation to the issue of mortgages, it is true, we have some young people whose the cost of living, their current level of income makes it difficult for them to be homeowners. And one of the things that we will need to do, as was pointed out, yes, they can rent, they can do rent to own until they're in a place to be able to afford a mortgage. But one of the things that we as MPs are doing is we want to work with our communities to help our people increase their earning income. It means that on our side as a government, we have to put the things in place that will stimulate economic growth. But then on the other side, the partnership with the citizens now is for them to prepare to take advantage of some of these opportunities, which means improving and increasing their skills. It means improving and increasing their work attitudes and their work performance so that they can every day make an employer feel positive about the decision they made to employ them, so that they can have stable employment and therefore can make themselves ready for engagement with a mortgage. I believe this is important, that if nothing more, they should be able to be owners of something in this country, to feel that they have a stake in Barbados and a stake in what Barbados will become. And so with those few words, sir, I want to commend the honourable member. I look forward to the execution of this work. I also look forward to the inclusion of many of our small contractors in this building program so that we can have a build out and an extension of wealth spreading much more among the ordinary contractors, sir. They've been missing from the landscape for many years under the Democratic Labour Party. We are seeking to bring them back, to give them the opportunity to be a part of this wonderful revolution in housing. And I'm obliged to you, sir. I look forward to it, and I trust that you too will enjoy these housing benefits in your area in St. Michael Central, sir. I'm obliged to you.
Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thank you very much. I displace you? Okay. Seniority. You apply it when it is relevant. Sir, I'm sorry that I was not present, and I apologize. The caveat is important for not being here to hear the breadth of the presentation made by the Honourable Minister of Housing. But I happened to hear the last two speakers. Based on what they have said, I believe that I should say something that will enrich the conversation on housing this morning. The member that spoke ahead of me concluded her presentation a little beyond the mundane by making reference to small contractors. I don't want to wait until the end and then discover, sir, that I have reached the limits of my presentation. Well, as long as I'm speaking about housing, I believe that I should take this one off my conscience. Too many small black contractors. I try to use a simple descriptive language. Too many black contractors are complaining to me. I don't know the rest, probably the rest don't know them. Are complaining to me that this massive 10,000 housing program that is to be completed within 5 years, that there are, in some cases, whether it is one agency or the other, I'm talking about the housing policy of the state in general, some of them as contractors receiving 3 units, no units, 2 units a year. They are also complaining, sir, that there is no profit as a consequence of the cost of materials for the construction of housing, especially by the UDC and by the RDC. They end up with a major deficit and have to inject funds into the construction of these houses. It has also led to contractors from time to time trying to cut corners short by trying to use sometimes damaged material, old materials, splicing 2x3 upright. They have no choice because there's something wrong with the level of the administration, who is fully conscious of the massive rise in the cost of material and knew very well that it was a marginal profit that was deriving from constructing houses for poor people by the UDC and RDC, sir. And the administration has not addressed these issues yet, but paying attention to other contractors across Barbados in relation to what they submit for the construction of these units, but no serious study with a board, with a cabinet, with a parliament, with individual ministers, and in some cases, some ministries got 2 ministers, and they can't resolve this problem as it relates to poor people yet, neither contractors or potential persons who would become residents of these individual units. And I really hooked on that because of the speaker that preceded me. And I thought it was a valid point, and I really don't have the time to exhaust the challenges that these contractors are facing, or the challenges that poor people are facing. Not only the long delay in the construction of all these houses, I hear a lot of beautiful projects being, and I use that word deliberately, a lot of beautiful projects being enunciated. How many houses are going to build in specific locations? You can't fix the houses yet that was damaged in Hurricane Elsa. So I don't understand how you can have a comprehensive scientific program with people who are supposed to be orderly, but can't fix the houses in Elsa yet. And in some cases where people use their residents also for commercial purposes, frying a few fish cakes and so on, and some chicken wings on weekends. The actual facilities have been damaged in Elsa, and there seems to be no focus in those specific areas. They're also giving housing contracts, to contractors who are building pens for poor people. In order to make things look good, we are producing units, pens are being constructed for poor people across Barbados. Adequate facilities are required. I don't just want to hear that this contractor is prepared to do the work at this specific price, but then the facilities and the size and the space within a bedroom and a drawing room is equivalent to any pen, any proper pen
Mr. Speaker,
in this country.
I raise on a point of order.
Honourable Mr. George South.
I rise on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Housing with responsibility for the Hurricane Elsa project, I can assure you that we are not building pens for the people of this country. I would wish that comment to be struck from the record of Parliament. This government is not building pens for the people of this country. We're building proper housing with recognized material that are bought and are used for building housing in this country, and to the necessary engineering standards in this country. That word pens should be struck from the record of this Parliament, Mr. Speaker.
Continue, Honourable.
I just said that probably my descriptive language might be a little different to other people's own. And I am usually accused of that. But I don't even know if the minister has any say over the space and the size of the houses. Or he's attributing to himself a certain amount of autonomy that does not exist with him. We have two ministers that are responsible for construction, and I will take him on a journey and show him the houses that I'm speaking about, built by the private sector. It happens at all times in history. When you put the private sector to carry on the construction of the majority of houses in this country, it happens all the time, because the major objective that underpins the spirit of the private sector is to get maximum profit out of their investment. The state has a different responsibility. When the state builds houses for people, the state builds the houses for people primarily with the objective of providing suitable housing for ordinary marginalized people. That was the mandate given to the National Housing Corporation initially. But all of a sudden, there is a shift in responsibility in achieving this objective of 10,000 houses, and the emphasis is placed on a private sector to do it. And I know the minister can suffer the consequence of it, you know. He can suffer the consequence of it because I don't think he fully understands what is the mission ahead. I don't think he fully understands that, sir. I am not anti-private sector, but I am cautious about the intentions of a private sector. And I watch the whole decentralization of the responsibilities of the NHC, and I watch the same thing occurring. I've been here now for the last few years under this specific regime. And I've been hearing about bringing the three different housing departments, correct? UDC and RDC together. Can't get it done yet. We can't get it done yet. And when you ask certain questions, I am an MP and I was here every since today. And when you ask certain questions, I don't know. That is not our responsibility anymore. It is now over to the other department. This is confusion. This is confusion. I see the houses with these eyes. I wear glasses, and I admit, but I move the glasses sometimes, and when I move the glasses, I can't even find them. And we are now on a journey of getting 10,000 houses, and everybody in here with this melody of calypso about these 10,000 houses. I hope that based on what we have seen before, the average is still correct. Because I would assume that if we're building 10,000 houses in 5 years, we should be able to see some signs of 2,000 houses per year. 10,000 houses in 5 years, 2,000 houses per year, sir. How much of those houses are built by small black contractors in this country? What kind of what percentage of the aggregate capital that is being invested is going into the hands of small people? How do we enfranchise our people? How do we enfranchise our people if we continue to allow 90% of the total investment into housing to go into the private sector that is not made up of ordinary people that look like me and you? How do you get that done? I am a firm believer in economic enfranchisement, sir. And I believe at the core of the spirit of this political institution, its philosophy teaches us to deal with equity and equality and enfranchisement. And that is not what I'm saying. I can understand people talking about having houses in their constituency as well. But I call that mundane business, although I believe that housing and unemployment is two of the most important social issues that we need to address in this country, especially in my constituency. I don't know the others, because I don't go into other people's business. When I was a minister, I would have to apply myself to national issues. But I have to always be cognizant of what is happening in Liquid Village. I have to be cognizant of what is happening in the Ivy. I have to be cognizant of what is happening in St. Barnabas and what is happening in Haggett Hall and what I'm seeing in all the other pockets across my community. I see people building houses out of plywood sheets. We shouldn't be doing that. We're talking about climate change and all of that. And the man getting some little galvanized sheets and sticking on top of the houses because they can't do any better. And then they're coming into conflict, major confrontation with the town planning department. This is homelessness is a major problem that we have faced all our lives in this country. And it's all right to sit down and write a few notes on paper and say we'd like to have X about the houses in my community and everything. I have that concern too, is that all of our concerns. But a percentage of those houses, if I go to my community and you go to my community and visit it in a general election, and you tell the people in my community, oh, when my government comes to office, we are going to address these problems here. Not only the massive unemployment problems in your community, but all the houses are clustered. We have environmental issues with the disposal of sewage. We're going to address that. I can't feel happy if you're addressing sewage in the northern side of Waterford and you don't address sewage in the southern side of Waterford, or engineers or public servants telling me I can't get toilets for my people in Liquid Village, and I can't get water, and I can't get the houses the people try. But I would expect the state to come now and help these people to rearrange their houses if necessary, put in the roads, have the necessary realignment of the houses, and be able to help, because that is the reason and that is the responsibility of an entity called a parliamentary representative. Not to come in here and talk and believe that the things that you're saying sound like gospel or melody. In the meantime, you're talking 365 days a year, 10 years, 20 years. The same thing that people were saying in the 1990s, people say in 2023 a year. And in the meantime, every morning I wake up and it's knocking on my door, sir. Do you have any units up here to rent? I need to know how many houses will be constructed that low-income people can have access to the state houses. I need to know that. I understand the minister, he's my friend, but I understand your position. They have right-wingers talking, socialists talking, Right-wingers like to give business people maximum profit even if they kill the poor people on the ground. And they have other people that will have a social conscience that would apply themselves in such a way that the lowest possible rent and the opportunities, conditions, terms, and conditions are suitable to ordinary people enjoying the benefits of vertical social mobility as a consequence of the policy of the state itself. I don't even need Chinese houses up here. Before we were talking about, well, I heard it mentioned in here, 2-inch walls, and we could not do certain things. The other party knew that they could not do anything. I want to know what sort of walls the Chinese houses got. I want to know if at a later date, these Chinese houses that we're constructing can be converted into single units so that the tenants will be able to purchase them. Because when we had the problem with the small partitions, it was said that they could not do it because in order to create some independence in the individual units, we had to enlarge the size of the walls, the partitions, and we had to allow the walls to be protruded above the roof. And then they were saying that you have to apply yourself to the conditions in the Condominium Act. Are we now going back in the same state? I don't know. I plead ignorance, as I usually do. Are we now in the same state that when we build these Chinese houses, sir, and the residents reach a stage where now the incomes have improved, the families? Are we in a position to say that these houses will now be transferred to the tenants, where the tenants could become owners? Or are these tenants going to be tenants in perpetuity? What is the policy? There's a necessity to have a clear policy on this housing program. At the end, the ultimate goal is to provide houses for the homeless poor. I'm not interested in anybody building the houses out of the state money or money that we borrow and building houses that end up being costing over $200,000. No poor man can ever own that or buy it. I want to know what is the unit value or the cost of every unit built by the private sector. Because I remember, sir, when they were constructing that building at the corner of coming across by the Garrison, at the time, the Prime Minister was the representative of that constituency, sir. And he built houses that when the former Prime Minister, my apology, the former Prime Minister allowed those houses to be built there. And when the technical staff, the administrative staff worked out the cost of the individual units, by Dalkeeper, sometimes the people get a little upset when we use words like woods and tenants, but my vocabulary developed in that kind of environment. So you hear me talk about pens and so on, right? Just like how you hear me talking about tar babies, when people would know what we're talking about when we talk about tar babies. When they were small and you ran both in the sun too long, they had ordinary men in the street who call you a tar baby, or you look too black. Maybe you understand that well. So when they talk, sometimes they get a little uncomfortable and people feel a little uneasy because they want to pretend that they did not come up in that environment. But I know that they did. So I don't mind that. Even on occasions, when I hear people say that I say something anti-black or anti-working class, I don't know if it's because of my poor standards of education. That people will say, oh, Prescott said this about black people. Me? But even when you're wrong, you're right. Straight talk. Because I know why we are in the position that we're in now. I know why we are running about every day trying to create a space in the economy. Don't care how academic or scientific economists are. We still got to be creating a space in order to help the people at the lowest end of the social and economic ladder. Whether it's in cleaning ash, whether it's cleaning wells, whether it's debushing, we have to be creating a space for these people all the time. And these people got the largest families. People got 8, 10, and 12 children. And some people try to say, but if you got 8, 9, and 10 children, you curse. You curse. Why should the state rescue you? But the state don't understand that as a consequence of the hardships through the journeys of year after year after year, from the time we came here, we had to be reproducing and reproducing in order that we exist. You think that it's easy when all these people went on the London transport? You think that it's easy when all these men went to Panama and Costa Rica? You think it is easy when we got to go outside and live and go in the States and change your name? Your name Babino and all kinds of funny names that you never hear any name Bobby. So you go down there, he calls for somebody by the surname, the body ain't looking wrong. What? This is the experience of working class people. You have to understand the sociology of working class people. There are so many black people in the United States of America that don't have the same surname now that they had when they were in Barbados. So we got a unique position. You can send all the young men, and make that point, say, you can send all the young men you want to the National Training Board. You can send them to the Polytechnic. There seem to be some people believe that God has assigned a standing or status to these people, that regardless of what efforts they make in order to meet the demands of society, the society has actually pinned them down to a specific status at all times. I have known persons who study hard and deserve better and can experience better because some people just look at them either because they feed the tar babies, either because they feed the village. Sir, no, can't accept village rat. But they see all of these things in us. Gap boys. You can talk wherever you like, you're a gap boy. And you can't, people in this country that be doing carpentry every cent, and masonry every cent, working, building their own poor people houses, can't get a job as a contractor telling me that for a whole year, these units giving them 3 houses to build. And I hear about who can build 300, who can build 200, and all I'm saying is getting the people that fatter all the time. Huh? Seeing people that fat becoming fatter. And if they see, sir, if they see you or I buy a new car, everybody say, oh Lord, you can't really state money. And they got people putting money in the hands of other people. And they got people in here and out of here who very fast to criticize when their own people begin to show little signs of mobility. Oh, he shouldn't do that. Yes. He should know better. This is environmentally wrong. It affects the lives of people who live in the close neighborhoods. I see other people doing all kinds of things about Barbados that is a major threat to the existence of our people. So I believe that we need to step back. I hope that my friend the minister don't feel too comfortable with the prestige of politics. I was not comfortable, never was ever comfortable in the environment. But I know how it is to wake up in the morning and suffer the consequences in the night of waking in the morning. Sometimes you wish you never got a chance to open your eyes because you cannot believe that your best friends are prepared to inflict harm on you. I know that. And I want you to be cautious, sir. Sir, I'm speaking through you. I want the minister to be cautious. Don't believe that he has such a hand on the policy. He starts off with a major challenge that no other minister has ever had in the history of Barbados. In the middle of a crisis, economic crisis, he had been asked to build 10,000 houses. And he does not have a free hand. We talk, we laugh. He tries to convince me. I don't believe him, sir. I don't believe him. Life is not so fair. Don't believe that you have a candy. You're smoking something but not candy. I know that. And I believe that if you could have done better, you would. So don't attempt to make a distinction between a unit that is not properly built as a form of human habitat and what is being built for chicken. Because these people in the private sector can build them at the cheapest cost and limited space. Because if they ever calculate the size of the house per square foot, you can go over $500,000. Well, that's the kind of people that they are. And I would like to see the state, sir. I would like the state to pull back the housing policy, centralize it some more in the state, and if anything, private sector will be included. But you see this new thing about private sector, public sector relationships? Nothing new. But I want to know the public sector getting. What the contractors that working with the National Housing Corporation and the UDC, I would like to see what they are getting. How come so many of these contractors saying we're going back around these people? Well, government, when we talk about these 10,000 houses, the contractors are saying, I'm not even going back in NHC for a job. And the intention was to be inclusive, to bring all of these contractors into the market so that they too can participate in building an economy. All of them, one after one. Ask UDC how much contractors they have now. That whole a track record in construction with them, not only with private persons, and with the government. That is not working with them anymore. I'm talking about housing policy. I'm not talking about NHC and UDC and all of these kind of things. I'm talking about the housing policy. Something is wrong. It needs clarity. The UDC has to sit down, sir, and look at what they are paying to contractors and look to see if they're getting back in return the equivalent to the money that they're injecting in these various projects. So I know that, sir, in this forum, sir, there are poets.
Honourable member, it's time to
Well,
start,
sir,
start to utilize you around here.
Yes, sir. I know in this poem, on this stage here, there are poets. I know that they are calypsonians, and I also know that they are comedians. I am not a comedian. I am not a calypsonian. I am the parliamentary representative of St. Michael's East. Sir, and with all respect to all of my members, they can't assign any role to me, because they have the same standing in here as I have. My view is that this policy of housing is a bit miserable. We need to purge aspects of it. And I hope, sir, that as a consequence of my erratic approach to dealing with these subject matter, somebody will glean some sense, some lucidity out of the presentation and heed my words, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Member St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, we propose to take our lunch break at this time, and I therefore ask that we suspend until 3 o'clock today.
The question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 3 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against it, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 3 p.m.